So with this, we move into the next panel discussion. This is looking into the future of electricity demand, and we all know that the demand of electricity is going to be increasing. India is in fact at a very crucial juncture where we have a huge development on the cards, and on the other hand, we have this challenge of reducing our carbon footprints. We are seeing with the development, especially we're seeing the renewable footprints more now in the EV sector. India has a very ambitious EV plan towards green buildings we are talking about. So with all that, the demand of electricity is going to be ever growing. And herein with our experts, we are going to be seeing and exploring on meeting this demand through the renewable energy sources like wind, to manifest maximum benefit for the environment, and exploring it in various sectors, industries, transport, buildings, and also discussing on the measures to enhance the grid infrastructure to meet the growing energy and capacity demands. I invite our moderator of the session, Mr. Rakesh Nath, the former technical member, Appellate Tribunal for Electricity, to please join us, sir. Our esteemed panelist of the session, Mr. G. Kumar Naik, I believe is going to be joining us shortly. He was there with us in the morning, Additional Chief Secretary to the Government of Karnataka. Inviting Mr. Chintan Shah, Director Technical, IREDA, Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency. And I think today, day before yesterday only, there has been by, I think, the IREDA chief that India will be able to complete its target of 2070 much before time. So that's a very optimistic message which has come across. Mr. Vikas Chandra Agarwal, the Director Distribution, Uttar Pradesh Electricity Regulatory Commission. Inviting Mr. S.K. Mishra, Director Power Systems of the Solar Energy Corporation of India. Mr. Kapil Maheshwari, Leader, Renewable Energy and Green Hydrogen Ecosystem, Reliance Industries Limited. So I think, so we'll start with the panel discussion. Two of our speakers are going to be joining us in the course of the discussions. So Mr. Naik and Mr. Maheshwari are going to be joining. Rest we have our esteemed speakers. We start with the discussion. Thank you, sir. Any questions also? If you have, please pen down your questions. You can give it to me. I'll pass it on to the moderator.
Hello. Good afternoon and welcome to the session on future of electricity demand. I think today, before the power sector, there are 4 focus areas. Number 1, decarbonization, both on the demand and on supply side. Enhancing the grid resilience and flexibility to enable variable RE integration and also to minimize the adverse impact of the natural disasters due to climate change on the reliability of supply. Number 3 is the financial viability of the distribution sector to enable the DISCOM to generate enough revenue, they collect enough revenue to meet their O&M requirements and for expansion, upgradation and modernization of the network, and also to ensure timely payment to the generators to ensure that the investment, there is a regular flow of investment in the development of the power sector. And number 4, and not the least, is the consumer satisfaction or the consumer-centric approach. I think we have to plan transition to low carbon energy, but we have to ensure that in the process we meet our demand, consumer demand reliably and at reasonable cost. And it is very important that each distribution licensee carries out its demand forecasting and resource adequacy planning. And resource adequacy planning, as you know, is the ability of the system to meet the demand all the time, in all seasons, in all hours of the day. The traditional way of planning, resource planning, of peak and energy requirement, I think will not work when we have large variable RE integration. And therefore, it is very, very important that we do the resource adequacy planning for the desired level of decarbonization. For example, if a state wants to meet decarbonization level of 50% in 2030, then they have to plan the resource adequacy accordingly and see what is the likely impact on the cost also, because I think cost is also very important for us. As far as the load growth is concerned, I think India is going to witness rapid growth in the electricity demand. Firstly, because the aspiration of the middle class is ballooning. We have electrified all our villages, and the rural area rightly has the aspiration of getting a reliable and quality supply. Number two, due to environmental changes, the ambient temperatures are rising, and therefore the demand is also increasing. And lastly, the zero emission target by 2070, which will result in use of green electrical energy in transport and other sectors to replace fossil fuels. I think we have seen the recent days, I mean since March, we have been seeing spurt in the demand. I think the summer has started early, the ambient temperatures are higher, and traditionally we used to have 4 to 5% growth, but this season we are having more than 10% growth. And in addition to that, we have coal shortages, and we have now landed in a situation of power shortages and power cuts. I think this type of situation has to be avoided at any cost when we plan for the transition. Now I would like to introduce the panelists. I think Mr. Kumar Naik is going to join us during the session. Then we have Mr. S.K. Mishra, Director SECI, Mr. Vikas Chandra Agarwal, Director UP State Regulatory Commission, Mr. Chintan Shah, Director Technical IREDA, and Mr. Kapil Maheshwari is also going to join us shortly. He is leader RE and Green Hydrogen Ecosystems, Reliance Energy. I think I'll request the speakers from the right, starting from Mr. Mishra to give their perspective about the topic of the session, some 2-3 minutes, and then we can come to the question answers.
Thank you, sir. So demand has already shown the color in this season, how the demand is growing, and this will continue like that, because there are multiple facets. Air conditioning loads get increasing like anything. Then vehicle, if you see the green plate vehicles are nowadays, very frequently you are seeing green plates. That vehicle demand is increasing because young generation have the fascination of green tech vehicles. So that demand is increasing very fast. So our point of view is that this demand is increasing like that. We have not anticipated the way it is going to be there in future. What the CA projection is that 2,280 billion units for the 2030. We have recently carried out a study, and we carried out up to 2039. And we find the demand may reach 2039 is 3,500 billion units. And the megawatt terms also, that a huge demand is there. The only thing is that now we have to plan the demand, how to meet the demand, and the basic challenge is transition of energy from the intermittency to the renewable you want to do. So this transition of energy we have to plan very carefully. point is that this no major thermal and gas addition is happening. Now, if we will not take proper care of the storage element in time, so we will again will be in the serious problem of this high rates in the way we are finding in the exchange today. That is initial points I want to tell. Thank you.
Thank you. The topic is future of electricity demand. I think we should re-crystallize the future of energy demand. Just to give you a perspective, if you took the energy basket of India, if it is 100 units, 17 units is electricity. The rest is primary fuel. So we are actually grappling with an issue which is massive demand in energy terms. Electricity demand is also there, but there's a huge demand for energy, and the reason is very simple. As the economy grows, the requirement of energy grows, and one has to fulfill this particular need of energy. Electricity is one of the method of transferring energy to the final end user. Most simplest way, most easiest way, and transportable way. That's the reason that we always look at electricity, and it's much more possible to see things in perspective. It can be planned properly. So definitely we are looking at energy transition also at the same time. We've been talking about carbon neutral to go net zero. Every country is putting up a target. India also is putting a target of net zero by 2070. Now, when you are saying net zero is just not electricity, it is energy also. Couple of things that have come up now is the way that things are going to unravel in the future by 2030 or 2035, 40, is you might have a very transformational shift in the planning itself, both in the demand side and the supply side. Now, one particular disruptor happens to be hydrogen. And the question was, how can we essentially use the primary energy from renewables to the main energy segment? That was always a question. Now, hydrogen essentially is like a Swiss knife, where essentially you convert from renewable energy to hydrogen and actually get into the energy segment itself, be in a different forms of hydrogen of derivative in terms of methane, ammonia, methanol, producer gas, things like that, and start replacing fossil fuel, which is essentially the primary input for all this fossil fuel derivatives. Now, that's something that's a game changer. Various companies in India have also announced green hydrogen strategy. Globally, it's been announced in a big way. Now, what might actually happen is, when you are going to put up hydrogen projects in the future, you might have co-located hydrogen projects. That means somebody will put up a 10 gigawatt RE park and a hydrogen electrolyzer over there. And the electrolyzer would require an efficiency of 95%, and which can't be given by solar alone. That means you'll end up consuming electricity when the solar is not there. That means a 10,000 megawatt hydrogen park would just not generate hydrogen, it will also consume 10,000 megawatt of electricity. It's a demand which is getting created, a new demand getting created, which is going to meet the energy demand, not the electricity demand. Now, this is something which is going to be very, very interesting. The entire transmission planning might change. What maybe RE park today planned today, which is going to infuse electricity in the transmission grid, would actually become a net consumer of electricity. The flow of electrons would reverse, because if you put up a hydrogen electrolyzer over there. These are dynamics which is going to happen. And another advantage of hydrogen is the final product, which is ammonia or methanol or producer gas, is dollar linked, and it's linked with petroleum prices at a global level. That means in a hydrogen project, you don't have to go for any hedging. There's a natural hedging. You can borrow in dollars and sell in dollars. It's like a dollar linked PPA, which also reduces the price of the hydrogen getting created. So this is something, these are disruptions, I would say, that is bound to happen in the future, because we have to also meet the 86% of the energy basket, which is not electricity, which is totally untapped. It's a massive one. If only we're talking about 500 gigawatt of electricity from the 17% of the energy basket, what would happen when you get into the place of 86% energy basket, which is non-electricity, which also can be served to a great extent by renewables? I think I'll put an end over here. Just more of thoughts. We can take it up further. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Agarwal.
Hello. As we all know that the energy demand by 30 will be 339 gigawatts, and in terms of billion units will be 2325. The question is why it is rising. The government of India is forcing into the electrical vehicles. They are planning to have 30% of the passenger cars, 70% of the commercial cars, 40% of the buses, 80% of the two-wheelers. So they will also create a huge demand of electricity. Similarly, if we go that by 2030, there will be 8-fold increase on tonnage of refrigeration due to the ballooning demand of the middle class. As the demand for industrial sector is something around 9 to 10% for all discoms, whereas the demand for household has increased to nearly 40% of the discom energy, and it is ever growing mainly because of refrigeration or the aspirations of the middle class. So this meeting of this demand has to be created in terms of the generation, but as the government of India is planning more and more on renewable energy, so the footprint, zero emission footprint by 2070, so increase in renewables is highly appreciable and should be forced into. But till now, the creation of RE has some of the typical problems. Main is the grid resilience in terms of islanding, in terms of harmonics, in terms of quality of power. As we all know that the average demand and the peak demand of the country has a difference of nearly 40%. So how to mitigate this? Our renewable is generally, in terms of solar, is available in the daytime, not in the evening. So we have to integrate this renewable in terms of round-the-clock power. So in terms of hydrogen generation or the storage has to come in big way. That's all.
Mr. Maheshwari.
I'll just take on from what Chintan and Mr. Agarwal said. All these buzzwords, what we are saying, is largely from last 2 to 5 years. Things spoken on round-the-clock renewable, green hydrogen production. While hydrogen was always there for decades, the process of electrolysis was always there for decades. Renewable energy was always there for decades. Then why the emphasis now so much on that? That's largely because all of us, including globally, we are now thinking to go towards and thinking very seriously towards energy security and energy transformation. While we at India have been possibly doing wind and solar for last 30 years, solar possibly for last 10, 12, 15 years, but round-the-clock solar is why, because we all know that the demand in electrification is increasing. And it is increasing and it will keep on increasing, while Mr. Agarwal just said that there's an increased demand right now from the residential sector. I still feel that from commercial industrial also there's going to be an increased electric demand. And while we all are talking electrical, and Chintan precisely said we should speak energy as well, because that's just a one sub-segment of that. But the focus is largely because we all see that target of 2030, non-fossil fuel, 500 gigawatt, all of that. And why commercial and industrial? Because the focus on financing community has increased substantially on ESG agenda. So with environment becoming in such an important factor, almost every industry is trying now to look carbon emissions very, very seriously. While in India, we only see people have been speaking on scope 1 and 2. Europeans largely have started working on frameworks and deployment of those frameworks to improve their scope 3 as well. And at any given point of time, possibly we also in a country needs to see how do we improve even on scope 3 when we talk of carbon emission. Even presently, I would say many of these industries doesn't even have a mechanism to do properly in carbon emission. We typically follow certain factors and get to the I am able to reach this. So possibly in fair framework, much more than what we have with SASB or BRSR. And also this would drive, because possibly most of these export oriented units would now see that they are not able to get clients outside or not able to get funding from outside because of their lower ESG score. So that's one aspect where I see the energy demand would again increase. Of course, residential is increasing because of the aspirations, what we have seen. Air conditioning is one big aspect which will continue to drive the demand. And with all of this, while we are saying that renewable will fulfill, the other way to look at it, how do we make the technology and business model in such a way that we are able to bring this whole thing. So from a technology aspect, Chintan mentioned that it's just in conversion. You generate electricity so that you convert that electron and do an electrolysis process, convert it to hydrogen, which is a molecule. Now, while we say that this is one way of handling the variance applicable to the renewable, so the one way of addressing the intermittency which is inherent with the renewable power, but at the same time, once you convert it to molecule, it has its own challenges in storage and transportation. So you're moving from one challenge to the other, that do you discuss the intermittency, or do you again discuss, once I convert it to a molecule, what do I do with that? So we have to figure out solutions from that also. So possibly all the other green derivatives could be in solutions. So once you generate H2, from H2 to NH3, whatever you want to do could possibly be a solution. And in that sense, I would say on the demand side, because we do have a greater demand for ammonia. So present hydrogen also, we say around 6 million tons, around 3.6 million tons. And all of this is gray hydrogen. Even 3.6 million tons is towards ammonia. And we also have roughly around 5 to 7 billion tons of import bill towards ammonia. And with the rising cost of ammonia, that makes possibly in good sense to figure out that how do we at least talk, if not the present sense of green hydrogen, at least green ammonia, once it is done from there. So those are some of the initial thoughts I thought I'll share.
Thank you, Mr. Maheshwari. Mr. Mishra, first question from you. Are we now going to see mainly round-the-clock biddings in future? And do you see any regulatory scheduling issues relating to as the plants are not co-located? And I also wonder, when you are doing the round-the-clock with a thermal, why can't the distribution company can itself do it? Because they have a lot of surplus thermal capacity tied up with them.
Sir, what you have said is correct, sir. Basically, what has happened in the initial 3 years before, when we have planned the round-the-clock, that is pure RE, not with thermal. At that time, we thought this, because the storage cost is very high, so we made different perspective, that is monthly CUF and yearly CUF. That tender was quite successful, and it has been sold to and states which has won. Now they are asking for more such type of tenders. The second part we did with the thermal. So that this thermal, what we did, slightly one bidder has only achieved that one. But what is finding this round-the-clock demand from the state is coming now in a big way. I am working with some of the states now. They are not asking now round-the-clock only. They are asking, follow my load curve. These are the demands are coming now. Because what they are saying, this 1-2 states I am in very serious talk, where the variation is 4,000 is the upper limit and 1,000 is lower limit. So this type of demand, I have to bring such type of tenders. We are designing such type of tenders. There are a lot of things to be sold in the market. Now we are also thinking the PPA level, what we are going right now, and we are not, merchant route is not getting created. This type of tender will create the merchant route, where 60% is tied up, 40% you have to send to the market, because they don't need container, they are not going to pay fixed charges also. Right. So this type of demands are coming, and we are finding not one state, number of states are asking this thing. So this is a huge...
so instead of the states, distribution company themselves planning to meet their demand and do the resource adequacy planning, they want the supplier to do it for them.
They are giving their projection in 2025, 30, up to 30, how your demand will vary. Now you give me that product like that, which varies in that. So the point is that if there is 60% demand, there are three concepts are there. 30% demand you will take. Balance 40% if I will sell to the market, you agree for the contract for difference. This if you sell to the market, if it is what the quoted cost more than that, you will take, and less than that that is one model. Second is 1 rupee minimum cost you give, whatever is sold in the market is your business. So this type of things are being discussed, and we are finding the rates finally going to achieve, because last bit what has happened with pure RE RTC along with the thermal, the L2 and L3 bidders, they have gone to the 3 rupees 16 paisa. They competed with the thermal. So we are very hopeful that this type of things is going to come in very big way. The scheduling portion, what you have asked about the different, scheduling will be at the regional wise only scheduling will happen. So that frameworks we are working, and we are hopeful there is not much as an issue.
Okay. So if one plant is in one region, another plant in one region, don't see any major problem.
We are very, because the regulatory regime is helping a lot, because first time when we brought the tender, so multiple connectivity they brought. There's so many helps they are giving to us. So there's not much of the issue.
Right. But I would personally like that the distribution company should themselves plan resources and to meet their round-the-clock demand and round-the-year demand. That is a better doing, and more flexibility. They will have more flexibility, because after all, demand estimation is only an estimation. Ultimately, it may not follow your estimation, actual demand. Anyway,
they are able to get the product like that, follow the load curve, then it will be best for them. They have nothing to pay for the what is not needed. Otherwise, if they themselves plan, so they have to invest more, and they have to sell to the market.
Okay. Now, some consumers are keen to meet their 100% demand from RE. So do you have any models or any suggestions for them? How can they do it in the present system?
Consumer means small consumers you're talking?
No, large consumers. Large consumers are willing to meet their 100% requirement.
What I talked about just now, this is 100% RE only.
100%.
When we talked to them, we said there is a model
like through virtual PPAs.
Virtual PPA and all things. This type of demands are also coming, and we are working on such type of demands. We are trying to aggregate the small also, because there are a lot of small players are there. They are not able to connect to that. So they want to come in different model. What this is, I am connected to the different states with small 10 megawatt, 15 megawatt. I don't want to go through the state for taking the green power. Equal amount I want to produce and sell to the market. You bring the product like that. Such type of things being clubbed. You sell to the market. I will act as a contract for difference. And this type of models are also becoming the carbon neutral by the different industries. So a lot of things are happening in the market, and we are finding. Only thing is that we should gear up ourselves in respect to land, in respect to transmission system. That is a more critical now, because I am not, demand is not an issue, and people want such thing. Now you have to install the project, you have to install the transmission systems in time. So that is a major challenge, is what I feel.
Okay. And what are your views about these merchant renewable power projects and development of merchant renewable power and the selling through market?
This is one of the, we are working from the last 1.5 years, and we completed the study, and we will publish shortly the study. And we thought if today in 2022 any merchant plant is set up, what will be the return for the 15 years? Then we have carried out along with the energy exchange and detailed 15-minute block for the 2039, considering all the addition what is planning in India. And our results are very good for the industry. It appears the returns are very high, and we are finding this nowhere return is less than 17 to 18%. Wind, it is more than 25%. The point is that if anyone is, we'll publish that result in detail. If anybody wants to install the merchant plant, this is the right time to install. Now we have to convince the landing community only how to land such type of plants. That is a major issue.
So let me come to Mr. Chintan Shah on this issue, whether you will be willing to finance a merchant renewable plant.
A merchant plant, if it is purely on exchange, is going to be an uphill task by any lenders in India. If it is through a fixed PPA road, I mean to say there's a virtual agreement or a third-party agreement, then in any case it's a very normal thing that we're financing right now. But having said so, we've been also studying various models for financing which is prevalent in US or Australia, where essentially people do sell electricity on exchange only. So over there also, the lenders would like to see at least a 3-year revenue. basically you would like to see some sort of a stabilization in terms of revenue, and based on which you can take a call how much of debt can be given. I think it's still nascent in India to go on a pure merchant, purely on exchange.
So what are the challenges you are facing in the financing of the renewable projects, considering that the margins in the competitive biddings are now reducing and the payment issues, delay in payment from the distribution company?
Okay, I'll try to break down this question in two portions. If let's differentiate between what's happening in wind and solar, and then what's happening in non-wind and non-solar. See, what has happened now is most of the players in wind and solar are large players. They are backed with either some PE funds or some global funds or hedge funds. They already have an adequate size of fleet of projects available with them, where essentially these projects might have surplus revenues. So there is a fair amount of resilience in their revenue. Plus they have a global credit record of paying off the money. So in such projects, I don't think financing is an issue. Everybody is doing financing, including us. And this financing happens at a very competitive rate. This essentially is a volume driver. The challenges lies with smaller projects, essentially when they have a power purchase agreement with the state discom, but the payment cycles can be an issue. And the good part is having projects been, the renewable energy, the sector has been almost like 30 years old, so we fairly know what's the payment cycle of a state. So as a lender, we try to build in that amount of working capital, so that the projects do run, because PPAs don't go bad. It's the only thing is that the discoms don't pay money in time. And there's a payment cycle, it may range from 12 months to 18 months. So you essentially build your working capital and capitalize it while financing, so that you don't face a problem. You still face a problem, and that's something force majeure.
So what is your strategy of funding the e-mobility and promoting e-mobility in the country?
Actually, last March, we financed the first e-mobility, and that's a pure B2B, as we call it, merchant. So there is a cab company in Delhi, which is an e-cab company in Delhi. So they wanted to have, they're having a 3,000 cars of e-cars fleet. So we financed those projects. We financed those cars. So first tranche of 300 cars we have financed, and we have given a sanction for 3,000 cars. So it's a pure B2B model, and based on the performance of the revenue that they generate from the e-car, e-cab, we'll be increasing the disbursement levels for them. Project seems to be viable. We tried, it was a tough call for us because it was first time for IREDA to do it. And the biggest challenge in an e-mobility is, as a typical lender, you always look for mortgage. And e-mobility, creation of mortgage is practically impossible. It's a movable asset. Except it is e-infra. In infra, you can create a mortgage. So this is something which is due, but the good part is the operating costs are very lucrative. And one has to look at purely take a call on the technology, because the technology is also evolving. That's the reason that we've taken a first step towards it. But if you're asking me, e-mobility is going to go in a big way, and most of the lenders would essentially chip in to give money. I don't foresee that as a problem.
And how are you planning to encourage new technologies like hydrogen? And
we are open to it. Rather, we already have a product to finance hydrogen at this juncture as we speak right now. And having talked about hydrogen, I think there's a huge scope for wind energy in hydrogen. As I was mentioning it earlier also, the electrolyzer requires an efficiency of 95%. Inherently, wind technology has an advantage over solar on the PLF side. A plant load factor of a wind turbine can go up to 40%, 45%. Solar, 18% is the limit. You can keep on having DC side, but inherent, the DC will not give you more than 18% PLF. That's just impossible to do it at this juncture. It may increase to 19% or 20% later, but that's it. There's a technical limit on the efficiency side. While in wind, because the technology is different, you can go to a higher plant load factor. And that is very important on the hydrogen side, because you require to couple your, whatever is not available from your prime mover, which is renewable sources, you will draw it from the grid or from the battery or whatever. So the cost of the electrolyzer and the overall setup gets optimized the moment you add wind to it, and also hydro. These two things has got an advantage on the hydrogen side, only purely on the plant load factor. Even as Mr. Mishra was talking about the RTC, because you have an ISTS waiver today, we look at a bus bar level. The moment you knock out the ISTS waiver, it automatically you will have more and more wind coming in, because you would like to economize on the ISTS charges, which is do with megawatt and not megawatt hours. And because of inherent plant load factor, which is higher in wind, ISTS combined cost for a wind power project will be lesser compared to solar. So it's an advantage.
So with the introduction of GNA now, all the plants will be at par because the transmission charges will be now borne only by the buyers.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when you are drawing electricity, at the end of the, if you take two options, for example, a wind turbine of 40% plant load factor versus vis-a-vis a solar plant of 20% load factor, the landed cost on the transmission side will be definitely in favor of wind, because you have a higher PLF, and that's why you consume you are essentially able to load the transmission asset much higher.
That's right.
That's an advantage.
That's right. Coming to Mr. Agarwal, what are the future plans of UP for decarbonization of the sector, and what is the role do you see for the Electricity Regulatory Commission in this?
Yes, one thing I want to add, sir. Our commission, Chairman Mr. R.P. Singh has created a fund for 7,500 crores from the DISCOM side, that each and every RE generator gets its payment in the time. There is no backlog from the UP DISCOMs for the payment of RE power. So this is the one big thing. The Commission has already directed the DISCOMs for RPO obligations to fulfill up to the Government of India levels. And they are achieving it. We are penalizing the DISCOMs, and they are forcing them to purchase we are not forcing them to purchase REC. We are forcing them to purchase renewable power. Because ultimately spending money in REC is not good. What the Commission feels, it feels power is important for UP, and they should have got the RE to decrease the carbon footprint. So that is the two things. UP government, UP DISCOMs have also invited the tenders for 3,000 of RE power, 6,000 for the peak hours from wind and others. They are under the pipelines, and they will come up soon. And one thing, you were talking of the merchant power in RE. So we have not the merchant power in RE, but we have nearly 300 megawatt of group captive in solar in UP already installed and working. So this is the one model they are working, and the prices range to the consumer end is something around 415 per unit. So that is, once the RE power is there, government of UP has given a solar policy and other policies, because wind is not available in UP. The highest speed in some of the districts is only 20 kilometers, 20-25 kilometers. So we are going mainly for solar, and again the government of UP is coming with the policy for hydrogen.
So are you able to enforce the RPOs effectively?
Yes, we are strictly enforcing it. That's what I'm telling you. We are not enforcing them to purchase REC. We are forcing them to purchase the green power to mitigate the and to create a lesser loss to the DISCOMs.
So do you also foresee development of some medium potential wind resources in the state?
So
you will be sourcing it from outside the state?
Wind is totally coming from outside the state.
From outside.
We don't have a potential of wind until unless there's some technology breakthrough in the wind energy for a low-speed turbines. Solar, we are taking in a big way.
So what is the role of Regulatory Commission in ensuring the resource adequacy in the long term? Do you have any regulations under which the distribution company along with the ARR has to show you a study of resource adequacy for next 1 year or 2 years?
Yes, that is the provision is there. And they are making it. They are already, that's what I'm saying.
Normally I am seeing in the Regulatory Commission only seeing energy, overall energy and the demand, peak demand. Because resource adequacy, as you know, you are a technical man, it's a very complicated study because you have to see the demand round the year, 87600
Yes.
hours.
But I'm telling, UP has a maximum demand of something around 20, peak demand of 23,000 megawatt. And we have already tied up capacity of 28,800 megawatt in UP. So the resource adequation is there. But what the problem comes is, we are trying to, the most of this 28,000 megawatt is mostly thermal. So we are trying to create the green power basket. We are making them to purchase green power. So they are going with, as I already told, that they are going with around different tenders of 3,000 megawatt.
The cost of supply at the LT level, particularly in the rural area, is 6 to 7 rupees per
Yes.
unit. So what are your plans for development of distributed RE, which will help in reducing the cost of supply?
Distributed, I have to do small terms. If we talk of 25, 50 megawatt, the UP was the first state which has come up with the policy for mini grids. It's the first regulation in the world to have mini grids which were free from any license, free from any tariff obligations. So we have nearly 1,000 of mini grids in Uttar Pradesh, the largest number of mini grids in the state of Uttar Pradesh, and they are working. And for I.A.S, we have something around 7.05 at the LT level. So the commission is, the state discoms are coming up for agriculture feeders. They are separating agriculture feeders, and they are trying to have solar 5 megawatt, 2 megawatt, 3 megawatt solars on that feeders will be feeding to agriculture load, because we are trying, the state of UP is trying to have the agriculture loads only in the daytime, not in the daytime. Earlier we were having a system of supplying to agriculture feeders or to the rural feeders in the evening, not in the peak hours and not in the daytime. So that what we are, government of UP is trying to have the daytime feeding to the agriculture feeders. So they are having some small distributed solar which will be supplying at 11 kV to the
They will
feeders.
be connected to the
agriculture feeders separately.
Distribution company substation.
Substations,
Right.
and access will be fed into the grid.
And the distribution company will be buying the
Buying the power, totally.
Mr. Maheshwari, I think we would like to learn from you about the technology, because you are a technology man, and at least I'm very raw to this. So when do you think the new technology like hydrogen going to be viable?
See, from a viability perspective, people are still doing protos, you know, anything can be viable. It depends on, you know, if it is in Europe with carbon taxes, it is viable even right now in certain parts of Europe. So we also have to see technology, business model in the regulatory framework all put together. How do we see that? So technology exists for years. Now what we are doing is probably talking about it and talking it at a scale with all of this electrification and green agenda. So couple of things which will make this technology viable in the years to come would be, first, every kg of hydrogen right now needs 50 to 55 units of electricity. Now we really need to improve the efficiency of the electrolysis process, and people are working towards technology to then bring it down from 50, 55 to 40. And that's what we call as the electrolyzer efficiency. So from present levels of 65 to 75%, bring it to 80 to 90% kind of thing. The other aspect of it to, you know, bring down the whole RTC power itself. You know, we've spoken that how do we bring the concept of wind solar hybrids plus storage to bring down the cost of round the clock, because the other aspect also can be looked would be why do we even, you know, talk so much on the grid infrastructure and ISTS network, etc. We generate from solar DC power. We can, you know, use for the electrolyzer also needs DC power. We can do DC-DC conversion and then co-locate the electrolyzers with the renewable power plant itself, rather than stepping it up to 400 kV to 2765 for very, very large systems, and then again using that power. So we really need to bring down this RTC cost. The only way I see from a perspective is energy dependence and the manufacturing should come in India. because if we continue to pay an import and we pay the import duties and the substantial increase which has happened in the capex side very recently, how do we address the element of round-the-clock power which we need for production of green hydrogen? So possibly we really need to look at each element present in the whole cycle, from making the solar modules or the wind turbines to making the battery cells and storage, and possibly also making the electrolyzers in India. So all of this, Government of India has now the PLI scheme towards that. So possibly that makes it more viable to look at in near future that once all this manufacturing starts in India, possibly round-the-clock power kind of a scenario at good levelized LCOs would be possible. The other way to look at it would be also electrolysis process, which is how do you improve on efficiency we spoke, how do you improve on the cost also, the capex related to the electrolyzer, how do we improve on the life cycle of the electrolyzer, which is presently 10 years, and how do we get it to 20 years kind of a thing, because when you're looking at an renewable plant for 25-30 years, you would look not to replace in between the electrolyzer what you are putting for that. Plus, from a business model side, as possibly as these projects become more and more prominent and technology is proven, I would say the whole weighted average cost of capital, the way people would look at project finance for these projects would also be very different. So all of this put together, I feel from 2025 we will see greater implementation towards adoption of green hydrogen. But at the same time, other derivatives, if we convert, there is a market right now also, if not in India, outside India. So we should not wait till that time.
Wind is going to play an important role in green hydrogen.
Wind, as you know, Chintan has already covered, would definitely pay. Any increase in the overall PLF without adding the element of greater storage. So, what it does is a very simple thing, that for a similar RTC, it will bring down the cost of storage. And that's the benefit what wind would play, because it's a little complementary to the solar in nature. Of course, we've already spoken on the load on the transmission network, etc.
So any other support required from the regulators or the government policy to promote?
No, the biggest support required, I would say, and I've been in the renewable industry and I'm only talking from that, and both wind and solar. The biggest support required would be to stick to the policy framework. Remove the uncertainty with the policies which keep on happening. So the regulatory framework should be very firm, so that the investors look at it more positive. Okay, I know from now till 25 years, I need to address and work in this regulatory environment. Even if I'm making lower returns, I'm making certain returns. So this uncertain environment, we've spoken in the previous section also, we've spoken on uncertainties, multiple examples of those uncertainties, and I'm not covering those again, GST, etc., etc. And if possibly we can move out of that and come with tenders which are more investor friendly. We've all seen responses to tenders which were REVA, etc. And those have been, very, very nice way from an investor perspective, that an assured offtake, assured payment. So that would increase the investor confidence in how they will look when they invest in these projects, because these are not projects where you tend to, it's annuity-based project, and when you discount your cash flows, you would certainly need that, okay, I'm able to do it in the most appropriate way. So
thank you. So can we take a few questions if there is time left from the audience?
Hello. My first question is regarding demand reduction. We talked about demand reduction. Presently, we have, in all the discounts, we have got a lot of agriculture consumers which are connected to the grid. And if we can take an ambitious program of shifting of all these agriculture consumers connected to the grid to the solar power in a time-bound manner, I know that the same is being implemented in Kusum, but the pace is very slow. So if we can take an ambitious program, then ultimately the demand on the system will reduce. And ultimately it will improve the DISCOM health, because we know that these consumers are subsidized consumers.
I agree, but at the moment I think we have, our peak demand is coinciding during the daytime. It is, so at the moment I don't think it would be advisable to shift the agriculture load to daytime. But in due course, when the solar component increases, I think it will be done.
Yeah, now we are promoting solar energy, and we know
now
that...
You see in the summer we have peak coming in the daytime only. So we have load shedding, shortages during daytime. So I don't think this is the opportune time, but when the solar component increases further, at some stage, definitely the agriculture load will have to be shifted from night to day.
Okay. The second question is regarding availability of the RE power, that is solar and wind, and also the integration with the grid. At present situation, why we should not think of more promotion of hydro pump storage system?
Pump storage. Mr. Chin, would you answer?
Already one plant is under commissioning under the pump storage scheme. That is a peak power, against the peak power tender in the Solar Energy Corporation tender, 900 megawatt they have won. In that, the pump storage is already under setup at the Rajasthan, at the Andhra Pradesh. And apart from that, the more tenders will come for the RTC type of peak power. So this type of plants will come in the big way. Already all the major investors has entered in this field. And we hope that this pump storage come in big way, and government is also giving lots of incentives to them, and early clearances of the project, removing from the lot of hurdles from the hydro project. So that is also in the main agenda of the government. So we hope this pump storage plant light of this will see the light in next 1 or 2 years. 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
I think pump storage, only one issue I see at the moment, one regulatory issue, where the distribution company is buying the electricity, located in the same state, and it supplies the energy for pumping, there is no problem. But when a pump storage sells at a composite rate, then there is a problem, because some of the distribution companies are saying that when you draw power from pumping, you will be treated as a consumer. So I think regulatory clarity is required on that. And personally, I feel after studying the various clauses that it should be taken as a generation activity. Pump storage should be taken as a generation activity. Any other question? So otherwise we'll wrap up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I am Kumar, sir. I am former Additional Secretary to the Government of India in Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and Joint Secretary Ministry of Power. And I happen to be from UP, so my question is addressed to Mr. Agarwal, sir. Sir, the present fulfillment of a renewable purchase obligation of UP is less than 40%, as against the 22.5% prescribed by central government. So, one of the major way we can achieve this RPO, or we can promote the renewable energy proportion in the total consumption of power, is Kusum scheme of central government of India. But consistently we have not been receiving a very encouraging response from UP, and we know that 18 to 19% of total demand of our country comes from agriculture sector. So why UP is not what is the plans of UP to fulfillment 22.5% renewable purchase obligation? And what is the plans of UP to decarbonize the agriculture, which is, in case of UP, is at least 25% of their total power consumption? And why they are not coming forward to promote Kusum, which will decarbonize the agriculture sector in a very major way? This is my first question, sir. Then,
So
if time permits, I will come with more questions, and this can become a monologue. Sorry.
Let me correct you. It is not that agriculture's demand is not that high what you are quoting. It is something around 9%. Secondly, why we are not going with the government of India percentage fixed in the RPO? As the state of UP solar irradiance is nearly 2.5 to 3% lower than the other states. And the land in UP is fertile. So, and we don't have any wind resource. So only left is solar with Uttar Pradesh. So we have made our trajectory in that way that we can slowly achieve those trajectories. By creating a trajectory and forcing the DISCOMs, that I earlier said it already, purchasing REC, do you feel it is good for DISCOM? I don't feel so. And my commission doesn't feel it, and my chairman doesn't feel it. Buying paper and without buying the power and paying money by the DISCOMs, which are already in a very bad financial situation. Who will pay the money? Ultimately, every loss has to be paid by the consumer.
Yes.
Sir, if the time permits, sir, my simple summation is, sir, that we have we have to contain the global temperature rise to 1.5 degree, and country has already made a commitment to achieve net zero by 2070. At the same time, we have to meet the growing power demand of the country also. So there is a contradiction between the two. So we have to compromise on the cost or whatever be the situation. And regarding your observation that UP have limited resources of renewable energy generation, so but nothing prevents UP from buying power from plants located in Rajasthan or Karnataka or Andhra or MP or Bundel or anywhere else. Or you can buy power through PPAs from other states, or you can buy power from
we can have the
CPs.
debate outside because otherwise it will result in an endless debate. Yeah, one more question and then I think we'll wrap up.
Yeah, see, RPO is more or less has been the things are complete with the various states, and their calculation methods are slightly. We cannot say that exact RPO has been achieved by the various states. But instead of RPO, why can't we have one fuel reduction sort of thing that with the states and other entities should reduce the consumption of coal and other fossil fuels so that it is it possible? I would like to have the views of Shah.
We have not given it a thought with this.
If I may add, Mr. Anirudh just said the country has a target of 2070 net zero. Possibly most leading states of renewable now also should take targets, and these targets should not be defined that the state would be net zero by 2050. It should be science-based target where they address that in the particular state, if I'm able to get to that 1.5 degrees temperature, and that's very, very complex. That's more complex than RPO. But possibly if states have been in race for addition of renewable power, I think there has to be a race for achieving the net zero status also sooner, because each state would achieve, then the country would. Like we are saying, the industrial sector needs to achieve. Companies have taken pledges by 2035, 2040. If the country needs to go to 2070. So each of the state also needs to take a pledge much before compared to when the country hits that target. So that's one way of moving beyond RPO and thinking a little more than that.
Yeah, I think we wrap up this session by saying a few words that decarbonization is in the consumer interest, and as Mr. Anirudh Kumar has rightly said, we have to really balance the cost and the decarbonization. And also we have to ensure as we move towards decarbonization that the requirement of power, requirement of the consumers is fully met reliably. And the price also, price of electricity also does not go up too much. I mean, there will be slight increase, but it should not increase suddenly to a very high level. And I think we have a very ambitious target, but if we have clear regulatory and clear regulations and policies, I think nothing is difficult. Our private sector is very enterprising and they will take the lead. Only our regulations should be, as rightly said, predictable and policy should be predictable and long-term policies in the right direction. Then we can achieve these. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you to all our speakers, and would like to request our moderator to kindly present the mementos to all our speakers, sir. May I request you, Mr. Nath, to kindly present it to all our speakers here? Yeah. Thank you to Mr. S.K. Mishra. Thanking Mr. Chintan Shah. Thanking Mr. Vikas Chandra Agarwal. Thanking Mr. Kapil Maheshwari. And may I request Mr. D.V. Giri to kindly present it to our moderator, thanking Mr. Rakesh Nath. And we'll close with a group photograph of all of you. So as very rightly pointed out, decarbonization is in the interest of the country, of our planet, and each of the stakeholders need to chalk out their own pathways, their milestones, their time frames towards achieving it. Thank you.